Xbox On. Welcome to Xbox On, the podcast with one host about one console, the Xbox One. I am said host, Jesse DeRosa, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about the latest Xbox news for the week of January 30th, 2020, including Xbox revenue is down overall, but Game Pass and Live are bigger than ever. Activision Blizzard has entered an exclusive streaming deal with Google, and more. Happy Thursday to all of you. It's currently Wednesday for me as I sit here recording the night before the show goes live, sitting and completely naked, wearing nothing but my new Tesla Cybertruck hat I just ordered. Came in the mail. It looks really nice. In fact, I think it looks so nice that I don't even feel the need to wear other clothing when I wear this hat. So, as far as you know, I'm completely naked, and that's just disgusting. But anyway, good day, and thank you for listening to the show as always. Let's start out this week with some comments, questions, and kind of feedback or whatever. And it's never really feedback. It's always just comments, really, from the audience pertaining to last week's show. So as we have started doing recently, we'll go back and see what people had to say in regards to last week's news or some of my stupid comments. But here we go. Our first one comes from our most regular writer, Dead Captain James, who, in response to my kind of argument or stance on why this whole jump from one console generation to another in the kind of power gap that comes with that isn't as relevant as it used to be, just because of the way games are spec'd and kind of built is different from how they used to be, and we need to kind of change our concept or kind of branding of thinking in that regard in order to really understand what that means as we get into this more fluid kind of Xbox future where, you know, a game can run on the Xbox One or the Xbox Series X, and you wouldn't have to compromise the vision of the latter to make the game run and perform on the former. So anyway, to that, Dead Captain James says, you pretty much nailed the answer for Series X being held back. As an example of why it won't be held back would actually be Red Dead Redemption 2. That game runs and plays on Xbox One Fat, which is what I play on. Me, not him. I also have this game on my PC. My PC is already as powerful, if not more powerful, than the Series X, especially in terms of CPU and RAM. And Red Dead Redemption 2 still pushes my PC until it screams. I can only play it 1440p Ultra and at 50 FPS because the game is so demanding. So the fear of the Xbox One holding back Series X is completely unwarranted. We also have to keep in mind that it's only for 1, maybe 2 years at max. So pretty much all the cross-gen games were in development well before the Series X was a thing. I think that last part is really actually a good point that I didn't really touch on, to be honest with you, last week. And to think that, yeah, I mean, Microsoft came out and was very clear that this is only a temporary deal. It's that kind of new iOS supporting old hardware type deal where it's like, yeah, you know, new games on Xbox Series X will support the Xbox One, but only for so long before, you know, you get a little further into the generation and then it's time to drop some old hardware and you just slowly kind of wean off the older hardware and add on to newer hardware as you get more and more iterations of hardware and more ambitious games, as opposed to more of like a cut and clear, like this generation, then this generation, as we're more accustomed to. So I think that's a good point to make. So keep in mind it is temporary, and as developers become more comfortable and more skilled at developing for newer hardware, the games will just inherently and naturally become more ambitious and more powerful, and there's no fear of, you know, how that's going to work on something like an old day one Xbox One, because that's not going to be supported for too much longer after the Series X is out. So in addition to that, the other point is that a lot of these games that are going to be supported on not only the Series X, but the original Xbox One, these are games that have been well in development for years, in some cases, months in some cases. And that's another good point because, yeah, games take forever to make, you know. Halo Infinite, while I'm sure that game has been in some capacity completely scrapped since the release of Halo 5, I mean, that game, by the time it comes out, it'll have been 5 years between Halo games. That's like, you know, that's not nothing. So, you know, these games are developed with, to think about it like this, the entire second half, or at least like almost 2/3 of the Xbox One generation went by between Halo games. So like that's how much 343 is. 343 starts this game, well into the era of Xbox One, and the game comes out at the beginning of the Series X. Like that's a lot of generation to take into consideration. So it's totally feasible that they could have made that game with not only the Series X in mind as they approach the next generation, but also with current gen in mind, considering that's what was the norm during the majority of Halo Infinite's development time. So that's also a pretty common thing. Shut up, Siri. No one's talking to you, Siri. Okay, our next comment comes again from my brother, who says, in regards to the concept of crunch in the games industry and this conversation of game developers being pushed to put in these crunch hours and kind of ethics in the games development sphere. He says in regards to my comment that this is all just a load of malarkey, and that it's kind of an overrun, drawn out kind of conversation that's really more for to drive clicks than it is to expose like a deep-seated issue in the games industry. So my brother says, I couldn't agree more about crunch time in game development. People love to question the means that bring us art, but contrary to the modern idea, sometimes the ends can justify the means. When The Shining was made, Stanley Kubrick was actually horrible to Shelley Duvall, berating her and making her feel awful. But in doing so, he drew out the perfect emotions in her that made her performance incredible. Was he a nice guy? No. But now we have a masterpiece that has inspired millions, and she was part of that. Art shouldn't be judged the same way you judge normal jobs. I agree 100% with you. First of all, as just a kind of throwaway, I need you guys to stop agreeing with me so much in these comments, because then it makes this whole segment seem more like a pat on the back and less like a discourse. But nonetheless, I do appreciate some backing up on my argument. Not that I necessarily need it, but that it is appreciated to know that I'm not completely crazy in my line of thought, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I mean, not that myself or my brother in this case are advocating, actual emotional abuse, as is the case with his example in the movie The Shining, but with the development of the movie The Shining, I should say. But yeah, I mean, this is a great point. It's like, no one is forcing anyone to be there. Yeah, sure. Sometimes people are contractually obligated to do the work they do, and that you might be able to rebuttal with that a little bit. But the point is, it's like, if you're an actor, if you're a game developer, you're there because you have passion, because this is what you want to do, this is what you want to create. And if you're the person driving, maybe the one making the decision that the game has to be delayed and that crunch hours have to be put in, this doesn't come from a place of like work. I don't know. This isn't like a normal job where it's like mean old personless boss that wants to drive profits up is willing to sacrifice everyone else's life for his own greedy good and the performance and the viability of his company. While yes, delays and things are for the viability of the company, because you need the product to be good in order for the company to succeed. That's not really what it's about. Again, from the level of artists making art, this is something you're going to put out into the world and then will be permanent and crystallized to the world forever. So like, do you want it to be good or not? And if you have any emotional input, or if you have any, chips or cards in this game, then surely one would think that you'd care about making it the best damn product it can be. So again, while yes, I'm sure this in some case has affected people in the past, and maybe sometimes there is crunch or stress or heartache or just loss or whatever it is you think in the games industry. Again, people like creatives creating art are here because they want to be here, because they care about the project and they understand the sacrifices it takes. They understand what it takes to make the cake, if so to speak. So I don't really see how there is any other argument to this. If you're not a fan of lines of work that involve like passion and just, I don't know, like the utmost desire to dedicate and instill yourself to your discipline, then it's probably not the right thing for you. But there's nothing more for me to really say on that. It just sounds redundant. And then our last comment for the week is actually from a new commenter, first-time commenter. Their name, Lethal Migraine, which, might I add, is just a really nice tag name. That's his YouTube name, but nice gamer tag, or alias, I should say. But yeah, in regards to my comment about Microsoft chasing more after the services and the Xbox brand and less so after the actual hardware, the box itself, he says, or they say, console sales are irrelevant. It's just a way to get people into the ecosystem. If you look at the earnings calls for just the last 2 years, Xbox made roughly $21 billion to Sony's roughly $13 billion. I'm not quite sure. I didn't fact check Lethal Migraine on these numbers. I'm not sure if they're referring to Xbox compared to Sony, because Xbox, of course, is a division of Microsoft, whereas Sony is the overarching company that encompasses PlayStation. So I don't really know exactly what they were getting at. I assume they meant Xbox to PlayStation, and even then, I'm not sure that those numbers are 100% accurate. However, this stuff doesn't completely surprise me when you look at it, because again, it's about the services, it's about the products. When you think about what's on PlayStation, your main service is PlayStation Plus, which is like their Xbox Live equivalent. Now, to my understanding, PlayStation Plus doesn't have the penetration or the ratio that Xbox Live has on its respective platform, meaning that I believe, I'm not sure where I read this, so that's why I'm sounding a little vague on it, but I believe that it was that most, like, while I'm sure many PlayStation owners are PlayStation Plus subscribers, there are more Xbox users that subscribe to Live than there are PlayStation users that subscribe to PS Plus. The reason for that, I would assume, well, a lot of PlayStation gaming can be done pretty adamantly in like a single player sense, as well as a lot of PlayStation Plus is something that was kind of introduced during a phase of PlayStation, whereas Xbox Live has always kind of been intricately tied and associated to the experience of Xbox. So I think Live is just more synonymous with Xbox than PlayStation Plus is with PlayStation, although I could be entirely wrong about this. I don't actually know. The other thing being that, that each of these platforms has a secondary service, Game Pass and PlayStation Now. And while, yeah, PlayStation Now has technically been around longer, Sony's done a god-awful job of really promoting and explaining and enticing users into becoming a part of PlayStation Now, although they have said that it's been growing as of late, whereas Game Pass has, while it hasn't been around quite as long, Microsoft has been much more aggressive about pushing it and getting people to subscribe to it and it conveying the value of it. I think in every aspect, Game Pass is just a far superior service, although I think PlayStation Now is a fine service that is probably on its way to get much better and will probably evolve to become more like Game Pass in the coming years. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that Game Pass is significantly more popular in its respective ecosystem than PlayStation Now is to its respective ecosystem. However, another thing you got to consider is Xbox. Again, this is the benefit of the Windows computer and getting your platform on more than just one piece of hardware, is that Xbox can generate a lot of revenue being on the PC, and it does, because you can use your Xbox Live subscription on PC. You can use Game Pass on PC. So that's a massive market you can now get to subscribe to your subscription, your service, because sure, there are a lot more PlayStations than there are Xboxes, but guess what? There's a hell of a lot more PCs than there are PlayStations and Xboxes combined. So that's a much bigger net to cast. That's a much bigger potential market. So I'm, again, not so sure about those numbers, but yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if Microsoft was just making hand over fist money, which we're actually, that's about to play into our first story of the week. So hang on to that for a second. Yeah, that's not surprising to see that Microsoft does very well in the profitability, despite being in second place when it comes to the actual sale of the hardware. And thank you, Lethal Migraine, for commenting. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you listening and hope to hear more from you in the future. So that's it for this week's shout outs, comments, questions. And remember, for next week, don't be shy, reply. Next, let's get into what I've been playing. But of course, before we get into what I've been playing, let me tell you what I've been eating. And this week, I actually had my sister visiting in town, and I live here in Orlando, Florida, which means theme parks. That's why I live here, is I'm a big theme park fan. And so we went to a couple of Disney parks while she was down here. And needless to say, I was eating a lot of theme park food while I was in the parks with her and vacationing with her, so to speak. And I've got to say, here's my thing, is for all of you that aren't super versed in specifically Disney theme parks, everyone is familiar with, theme parks in general, whether it's your regional Six Flags or something like that, or if it's something up to Universal Studios or Disney or something whatever. The point I'm trying to get at is there's always been a stigma with theme park food, right? It's super overpriced. It's super shitty. It's, it's cheap. It's disgusting. It's, it's something that's serviceable, but everyone would prefer pretty much anything over, theme park food. You could spend a fraction of the money and get something way, way better, even at a fast food restaurant. That's generally the stigma. And I don't blame people, if your experience is going to your local Six Flags park and paying $14 for the worst plate of nachos you've ever had, then I don't blame you for having that mentality. And I think the stigma has been perpetuated for so many years that it's really hard to shake that kind of mindset. But I've got to tell you, and sorry for the long tangent, the long preface, but I've just got to tell you, there is nothing in this world as special to me as the quick service, the fast food, the junky food you can get at a Disney theme park. It's just very, very special to me. And, a lot of people, back when I moved to Florida, a lot of people thought I was moving here because they think, oh, if you love Disney, you just want to work there. You just want to ride the rides all the time. And it's like, no, you stupid idiot. It has nothing to do with that. I could give a shit less about all the rides. Every fucking ride at Disney World could burn down to the ground, and I wouldn't give a shit. I don't care about Small World or Space Mountain. What I care about is the $13 cheeseburger and fries at Cosmic Rays, or the $11.50 7-inch pizza at Pizza Rizzo. And don't mind the names of the restaurants. The point I'm trying to make is the quality of that theme park food is so artfully shitty to the point where it transcends your general conception of, what theme park food is. And it enters this realm of like so bad it's good, or sometimes it's just straight up good. And you don't mind the price. Let me tell you this, the more and more time and money you spend in theme parks, the more and more you get this Stockholm syndrome where you're just like, oh, $13 for a cheeseburger and fries, that's completely normal, and you just pay it up. You don't question it. Never mind the fact that there's a McDonald's in your neighborhood that you can get the same amount of food for like $5, and it might even be better in your opinion. Of course, your opinion would be wrong because there's just something really special about that Disney food. It's what I live for. It's a lot of why I live here now in the Florida region. And just a big old shout out, specifically to Disney theme park food, but theme park food in general. It's completely underrated. And shout out to Disney for doing such a great job with really catering to a lot of different palettes for theme park food. You'd be surprised if you haven't been to a Disney theme park in recent history. They've really done a great job of really making some of their menus more robust and offer like some really interesting food options and just offering some really quality food. And I know this show's about Xbox, but Phil Spencer once said none of this would be here today, Xbox, Halo, all of it, if not for that goddamn $13 cheeseburger with fries. I know the bun was stale and wasn't cooked, and I know the fries were like 3 days old, but goddamn was it good. And I think that's something we all must keep in mind while we pursue this idea of mental health when we're playing games like Hellblade. And speaking of Hellblade, let's get into what I've been playing, because despite talking about it ad nauseum, I have still not played Hellblade. In fact, this week I've been incredibly busy. Like I said, my sister was visiting. I've just had a big week at work. This is just one of those weeks. Everyone has them from time to time where life gets ahead of you and you just don't have the time to sit down and play games despite wanting to do so. I did knock out like another hour of Mass Effect, and now that this longer, busier week of mine has passed, I'm planning on getting into a lot of Mass Effect over the next week, maybe even just beating it over the next 7 days, hopefully. But I'm enjoying that. I'm really dedicated to sticking with it and finishing it. And I'll have more to say about it next week on next week's episode. But yeah, really, as far as what I've been playing, that's really it. It's just Mass Effect. So sorry to disappoint you if you wanted to hear all about how I was playing some Japanese dating sim. I wish. I just haven't had the time. Other than that, I guess I've been playing a little bit of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games 2020 right before I go to bed every night on the Nintendo Switch, but that's really something I should keep to myself because it's kind of a embarrassing fact. All right, now let's actually get into some goddamn news. I guess that's what you actually listen to this show for, probably. Maybe. I don't know why anyone would listen to this. So let's start this week with one of those, I don't think it's real news, so we'll categorize it as not really news type news. And it is a rumor that came from Synlinks, a site I've never heard of ever. And they're suggesting that either a remake or sequel-esque reimagining of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic might be in the works. While rumors of the series making a comeback in some form or fashion have been known for a while, including Lucasfilm CEO Kathleen Kennedy even saying that they're looking into exploring that era, these are still technically unsubstantiated reports, and who the hell knows? Yeah, I mean, I just didn't really know. I battled with this a little bit because I was like, do I put it in the news? Do I not? I'm going to put it in there as that not really news kind of thing, just to say, yes, I saw this. Be aware that it's a thing. Just don't get your hopes up too much. There's rumors that the Mass Effect Andromeda team is actually working on this remake or this reimagining. And then there's also rumors that like whatever they're making is some kind of hybrid of like elements of Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 morphed together into one like new kind of reimagined game. Keep in mind that, while BioWare did originally make the first Knights of the Old Republic, the second one was actually made by Obsidian, the guys that make the Outer Worlds, so completely different developers. And I don't know, this is just one of those things where people really like Knights of the Old Republic. EA still technically has the Star Wars license for a little while longer. You would think they want to shit out at least like one more big Star Wars game before they lose that license or have to re-up. So this would make sense in that regard, but also with Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order doing as well as it has, I wouldn't be surprised if they just let Respawn make a few more Star Wars games before that license goes out or whatever. Or who knows, maybe they're even ballsy enough to try Battlefront 3, which I know Battlefront 2 people keep saying, it got better. The community behind that game is actually really into it today. It's awesome to see that DICE has really doubled down on the support and really turning things around for that game, but the stigma's still there. I'm sure if they made a third one, it'd sell very well, but it will come with a lot of shit just because people love to hate stuff, and Star Wars is a really hot thing to hate, and I just don't know that going back to Battlefront is what you want to do right now. So in a lot of ways, this does make sense, go back to something people love, but people are so down on Star Wars right now. The last thing you want to do is take something they love like Knights of the Old Republic and fuck that up too. So I don't know. Maybe this is a real thing. We'll keep an eye on it, but I didn't want to put this in the news and be like, hey, get ready for Knights of the Old Republic. It's coming back, because we don't really know yet, but here's hoping, I guess. I still haven't. I've started the first one. I've never finished it, and I never even touched the second one. So I can't say too much about my experience with those games, but I know people really, really love them. It's often, the first one's often regarded as like the definitive best original Xbox game. Of course, you're a fucking insane human being if you think the best games on the original Xbox were anything other than the first two Halo games, but this is America and you are allowed to be a psychotic person, I guess, if that's how you choose to live. But now we will move into, we do have one more not really news story. A lot of outlets were picking up this story where Phil Spencer tweeted out how he was thinking about how frame rate is more important than resolution when it comes to power in consoles or performance in consoles. One, Phil Spencer has said this before, so that's not big news. Second of all, this isn't really a news story. This is just a guy sharing his thought about the preference of frame rate or resolution, and I don't see how anyone could think otherwise. I mean, frame rate affects how your game performs and plays, which is critical, and resolution, is more about the aesthetic, which, while extremely important and extremely, attractive when a game has a wonderful resolution, when a console's capable of rendering beautiful resolutions and graphics in games, the more important thing is that the game runs and plays well, and frame rate is critical to that. So yeah, Phil Spencer said frame rate is more important than resolution. I don't understand why sites like IGN think this is such a big news story, but I understand that they have a business to run, and if you're going to click on a story that says that, then I guess we'll count that as news now. Can't wait to hear what Phil Spencer thinks about, American versus Japanese automobiles, because I guess every opinion he has is a fucking news story now. Anyway, let's get into some actual news stories. Our first one for this week, I'm actually going to pull directly from Windows Central, a source I use quite often because this is about earnings and money, and I don't want to write my abridged version of this because it'll just come out sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't. So yeah, our first story, and it's kind of ties in with the second story, but the first one is that Xbox revenue has dived as next generation looms in Microsoft's Q2 2020 earnings. So directly from Windows Central, the report reads, Microsoft dropped Q2 earnings for its 2020 fiscal year today, outlining increased revenue to $36.9 billion, with major growth across Redmond's lineup of products and services. That pairs with a notable downturn for Microsoft's gaming portfolio, reporting a sizable 21% decline in revenue over second quarter 2019 earnings, down at $905 million. Waning Xbox performance comes as Microsoft readies for next generation platforms, with Series X and, of course, PlayStation 5 scheduled for launch later this calendar year, that regularly couples with reduced investment from consumers as internal efforts steadily shift towards upcoming decade of Xbox and supporting gaming services. Hardware revenue dropped 43% as Xbox One sales reflect an imminent successor, of course. And Microsoft is also reporting that 11% decline in their Xbox content and services revenue, spanning supporting Xbox titles, subscriptions, and other fundamental components of the Xbox ecosystem. It attributes the year-over-year drop to unnamed quote third-party titles, or a third-party title, which we assume is Fortnite or Red Dead Redemption 2. The free-to-play battle royale saw content revenue surge parallel to its peak, while Rockstar's Games Western dominated 2018 sales. Growth of subscriptions, including Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold, particularly offset through increased revenue. The 21% decline in overall gaming revenue is significant, signaling a weak period for Microsoft's Xbox efforts and beyond. Conversely, the decline follows an impressive comparable quarter with the reduced traction of upcoming generation brings. Microsoft's fiscal year 13 quarter 2 results, covering a similar period, preluded the Xbox One, saw an 11% tumble from the former entertainment and devices division, with a 28% drop in console sales. So that last part's really important, where it's saying, right before, it's talking about the end of the 360 generation, right before the Xbox One came out. Back then they called that the entertainment and devices division, before it was the Xbox or gaming division. And it's talking about how it had a pretty similar down, almost down to the number. Well, not really. It had a similar drop, not quite as substantial as what they're experiencing now. But, this is, I guess what that means is that this is just pretty par for the course. Obviously people know that there's a next generation Xbox, especially now that, Microsoft's been so vocal and even publicly revealed what the console looks like. So a lot of people are saying, I'm good. I'm going to keep playing my Xbox One. I'll keep playing Game Pass in the games I have, but now I'm saving my money for the Series X. That's just pretty common to see that happen. So this isn't like a bad thing. This isn't like frightening that game sales are dropping, although I am surprised to see just how much it's dropping. 43% is nothing, to sneeze at, compared to the 28% they experienced back in 2013, right before the Xbox One came out. But also that's kind of a different story. The ecosystem's kind of different, because back then it was all Xbox 360. Now Xbox, a lot of players are playing it via PC and things like that. So there are a lot of other factors to take into consideration. But this is pretty standard stuff. Microsoft has actually been doing very well, and they've been like breaking sales records and predictions every quarter as a company, with a lot of things like Microsoft Office and most importantly Microsoft Azure, their cloud solution technology, being really the kind of financial spearhead for the company. When you really pull Microsoft's Xbox division out of the company's portfolio, it's not making up the big chunk of the company's revenue. In fact, the 36.9 billion in revenue, only like 2.2 billion of that 36 million was from Xbox. So just to put things into perspective to you, while Xbox is, yes, profitable and it's nice to have that in the fold, Xbox really is not the big breadwinner for Microsoft. And this is why, people have rumored over the years, this was a bigger rumor 10 years ago than it is today, that Microsoft, might just spin off Xbox. They might try to sell the brand. They might just try to tear it down and just forget about it and scrap it all together. Now, while I think there's no way that's what Microsoft's planning on doing, especially with their new vision being as, kind of fluid as it is, and kind of flexible on so many different platforms and so much hardware, I really don't see that ever being a reality or anytime in the near future. But, this puts into perspective how small the Xbox division really is in the grand scheme of things over at Microsoft. Despite, our perspective as Xbox fans, as people who, consume Xbox news on a daily basis and play this console daily and can't think of the name Microsoft without associating it with the Xbox brand. But it really is just kind of this smaller side of the whole thing. I mean, it's crazy to think about. But our next story might make you, if you feel all doom and gloom about Xbox, this next story might help turn that perspective around a little bit. And it's kind of within that same earnings report. It's that Xbox Game Pass users have doubled, and Xbox Live has broken records in quarter 2 earnings. So despite the hardware being down, it's looking good for the services. And the article again reads, quote, from Windows Central, Xbox Game Pass and Live emerge on top in Microsoft's fiscal year 20 quarter 2 earnings. So Microsoft recently relayed that its fiscal year 20 quarter 2 earnings detailing increased revenue to $36.9 billion with impressive growth across the past quarter. That also brings 21% decline in overall gaming revenue as efforts shift towards the upcoming Series X and fewer third-party titles leave their impact on the market. However, Microsoft's ongoing investment to Xbox subscription partially offset those losses, with Xbox Game Pass and Live smashing records. Speaking on Microsoft's second quarter 2020 earnings conference call, CEO Satya Nadella confirmed Xbox Game Pass subscribers, quote, more than doubled this quarter, end quote, as the Netflix-style subscription steadily emerged at centerpiece at the Xbox and PC offerings. Nadella also confirmed it set a, quote, new record for Xbox Live monthly active users, end quote, primarily attributing to the strength of the Xbox console. Firm user count for either service weren't provided. Growth of the Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold come as a little surprise, both framed as core components of the modern Xbox vision, following expansion to PC and the introduction of the all-new inclusive Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, with a rotating library of over 100 titles possessing an unmatched value proposition in both newcomers and Xbox veterans. Now, of course, this is what kind of turns it around, and if anything, affirms what I've been saying, which is that, you know, the future of Xbox isn't in selling as many boxes as possible. And while, yes, that is a nice thing to do, and Microsoft would like to sell as many as possible, it's really about the services. And this is the proof that shows that even when revenue is down, you know, even when they're not selling as many Xbox units, and when people are spending less money in games like Fortnite and Red Dead Redemption, which generate tons and tons of revenue for Microsoft, and even when, you know, people are just buying fewer games for your console, you can still make a shitload of money because Xbox Live Gold and Game Pass and Xbox Live Ultimate, which combines the two services into one. You can have all these people just steadily paying and generating all this revenue month to month because they're playing their games through Game Pass, because they're subscribing to your service in order to use their console. Just because they're not buying extra consoles or new games for their console doesn't mean they're not using it and playing it. And these services make that barrier to entry and that usability so easy for consumers, and therefore translates to just really easy money for Xbox and for Microsoft as a result of, you know, maybe you have an Xbox One and you want to upgrade to an Xbox One X, but you know that the Series X is on the horizon, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to pass on that. I'm not going to buy a new Xbox this holiday season, despite the good Black Friday sales, because I know next year there's a new console. But guess what? You're still going to pay for Game Pass every month. You're still going to play new games via Game Pass. You're still going to pay for Xbox Live so you can get your games with gold and play online games and all that shit. And that's where Microsoft's making their money. And now they're going to make even more money doing that, because guess what? Game Pass is on PC now. So if you're that kind of person who's like, I won't buy an Xbox, there's a couple of games I want to play, but I'm not going to buy a console just for Quantum Break and Sea of Thieves. Well, guess what? Now you can play those games on your stupid PC because you're a damn nerd, and you're going to get Game Pass on your PC and play those games there and all that, because there's so many places to play it. And then, you know, xCloud might even contribute to that vision as well, especially as it rolls out in a more official capacity, more people get into it, where, you know, maybe you wouldn't buy an Xbox for that one game, you know, for Sunset Overdrive, but fuck, you can just play it on your Android phone, because you can connect your PlayStation 4 controller to your Android phone, and then all of a sudden there you are playing an Xbox game. So it's just an awesome situation for Microsoft, because while the perception from the kind of traditional console war is always, you know, who sells more units, who's more popular, Microsoft's over here like, who gives a shit? We're making money no matter what, because you guys are subscribing to our Xbox services. And that's really what it's all about. So as long as these services continue to thrive and do well, we as Xbox fans and as Xbox consumers continue to win, because that tells Microsoft that people care about Xbox, that people care about the brand, because they're going to subscribe to Game Pass to play the games that Xbox has to offer. And that means more Halo at the end of the day. So I'm happy with that, and I hope you are too. So let's move into our next big story of the week. This one not so exciting because it involves Google, and everyone knows Google's the worst. So in a press release that came out earlier this week, it announced that Activision Blizzard and Google have joined forces in a partnership that will see Activision Blizzard games to stream exclusively via YouTube, meaning serious broadcasts for games like Call of Duty, Overwatch, and Hearthstone Hearthstone will be streamed through YouTube. Google Cloud will also be hosting infrastructure for Activision games going forward. And of course, this announcement, there was no mention of Google Stadia, Google's recent game streaming service that competes with the likes of Microsoft's Project X Cloud for playing your Xbox games via the cloud. So this is big news, of course, because, well, not because, this is a Google podcast, but because, of course, YouTube and streaming via YouTube is in direct competition to Microsoft's own streaming platform, Mixer. So, obviously Activision Blizzard, one of the biggest names in gaming, obviously Activision with games like Call of Duty and Blizzard with games like Warcraft, Overwatch, what have you, Hearthstone. That's just a massive, massive loss because these are some of the most watched games that get streamed, is of course Call of Duty and Overwatch in particular. The only other things bigger than those is like Fortnite in Apex Legends or League of Legends or some bullshit like that. So this is a massive loss for not only Twitch but for Microsoft's own Mixer platform. And that doesn't, of course, mean that serious streamers aren't going to play their games on Mixer, aren't going to play Activision Blizzard games on Mixer. What's his name? That relatively newly signed streamer that's on Mixer. He plays a lot of Call of Duty. He's still going to play Call of Duty on Mixer, so that's great. But, when Activision hosts like some gaming championship, some MLG, whatever the hell it is, it's going to be done through YouTube, and that's going to bring a lot of eyes to YouTube. And whether or not that really translates to YouTube streaming growing the way Google's been trying to grow it, it definitely does take the thunder away from platforms like Mixer, as Microsoft, is really, really aggressively trying to grow Mixer and compete with the likes of Twitch. I think for Twitch, this doesn't mean too much because Twitch is just so massive. They seem to be able to kind of lose whatever and still stay in a good position. But, for any of you hoping that Mixer could grow further and further, this is one of those things that's kind of a bit of a blow because this is a massive get for Google and for YouTube. But nonetheless, I don't think this is the end all be all. I think what's more important when it comes to these streaming platforms is kind of the community aspect. When it comes to more of like the series broadcast, like a Call of Duty championship or something like that, even if people, sure, maybe people will tune into Google or YouTube streaming to watch that championship, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily where they're going to stay. I think the main benefit to Microsoft's approach of getting, specific streamers like Ninja onto Mixer is that it has that kind of personalized effect to it where, you watch Ninja not because he's awesome at the game, he's fun to watch. I'm sure that's a part of it for people that watch him, but you watch him because the same reason you listen to a podcast or the same reason you follow any type of YouTuber is because you like the personality, you like the person, you enjoy the content, you enjoy the opinions and the views, and that's what keeps you there and then makes you, as a result of that, like the streaming service, whether it be YouTube, Mixer, or Twitch. And so that's why I think Microsoft's approach of getting, specific streamers exclusive on their platform is better because it has that people who now have to use Mixer to watch Ninja instead of Twitch now have to use the Mixer system in order to hang out with their Ninja community, and then they get acclimated to the Mixer system, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I like Mixer because I've been forced to use it so much to watch Ninja that I've really gotten acclimated to, associating my Ninja watching experience with my Mixer using experience. And I realized that that's a platform I just prefer due to its features and everything else. Whereas, tuning in for like the Call of Duty championship might be more of a one and done thing. It may be something you watch like retroactively and like a recorded YouTube video. So I don't think it has quite the same potential to draw in the viewers and not the viewers, but I guess the long-term viewers. It might bring more of a one and done kind of effect. But regardless, this is a big get for YouTube nonetheless. Like I just said, Activision Blizzard, obviously some of the biggest names in gaming, so this isn't nothing. But nonetheless, I find it weird that they don't somehow bring this aboard. They don't mention Stadia. They don't mention anything about like how servers for these games are going to be, or like some partnership to bring all Activision Blizzard games going forward to Stadia or anything like that. And you think they would be because Google just launched this game streaming service, and now they have this great deal with the biggest name in gaming, in game publishing, and their streaming service for like watching video games, but it has nothing to do with their streaming service to play video games. So I don't know, we didn't need any more proof that Stadia kind of came out and fell flat on its face and isn't doing so well. This kind of furthers that notion. But that's all we'll say about that. Our next story here is pertaining to Konami and a potential Silent Hill game, or Silent Hill sequel. So per Eurogamer, the article reads, Twitter user Aesthetic Games has leaked details suggesting that 2 new Silent Hills games are in the works, one of which is a soft reboot of the franchise, while the other would be an episodic experience a la Life is Strange or any Telltale game. This was all the leaker could confirm, as they admitted to not knowing anything more about the potential games, just that they were likely in development. Silent Hill was last seen in 2014 when the mysterious demo for PT released on the PlayStation 4 and revealed itself to be a Hideo Kojima developed Silent Hill game made in conjunction with director Guillermo del Toro. Unfortunately, the game never saw the light of day, and the demo was removed from the PlayStation Store, making it unplayable to anyone unless they had it downloaded on their PlayStation hardware and never deleted the file. Despite PT not being a thing on Xbox, there's no reason to believe that a future Silent Hill game wouldn't be available on Microsoft's hardware, as Silent Hill games have been on Xbox hardware in the past, and Konami is a third-party publisher that probably wants to make money wherever they can, so why not put it on Microsoft's hardware? So this one is more of one of those, if you're a Silent Hill fan, it looks like there's a good chance Silent Hill's coming back. This one is like, I'm so half and half on it. On the one hand, you've got Konami, who's been so hesitant to jump back into really full force making video games. Ever since the falling out with Kojima, they've really stepped back from games. They've done a couple of re-releases, and they did that Metal Gear Survive, but they're really not focusing on gaming so much anymore. And for those who don't know, Konami is a really big company in Japan for a lot more than games. They own fitness clubs. They own like a water bottle company. They're one of those like Japanese companies that's like very diverse and gets into like a lot of unrelated kind of businesses in Japan, which is kind of a common thing for a lot of Japanese companies. But in the US, of course, we only know them as a games publisher, which is all they've ever really done overseas, outside of Japan, their home country, of course. So we've seen them kind of get really, lazy in their games division, with the exception of making like these pachinko gambling machines in Japan. Again, something that's like somewhat video game related, but really more of a gambling machine. So we just don't see Konami doing games anymore. But on the other hand, it does make sense that Konami could potentially want to jump back into the Silent Hill franchise, considering the success of Capcom's kind of resurgence in the Resident Evil franchise, which is probably the closest competitor to what Silent Hill was, or rather, Silent Hill is more of the response to Resident Evil historically. But nonetheless, obviously, Capcom's seen huge success with the release of Resident Evil 7, and then with the remake of Resident Evil 2, and now they're about to have Resident Evil 3 remake, which seems to be garnering lots and lots of attention. They've been doing very well with the resurgence of Resident Evil 3. It would only make sense for Konami to kind of ride this wave and this resurgence of the horror game genre and kind of say, hey, well, we have an IP that people miss in the same way they missed Resident Evil. Why don't we bring it back? Why don't we get someone to reboot Silent Hill or make a new one, or let's do something different with it, kind of like how Capcom did something different with Resident Evil. And in that regard, I'm like, well, this makes perfect sense, especially the idea of the episodic thing. It's like, that's a new way to do Silent Hill, or just the reboot of the franchise. That's a new way to do it. And you don't have to have Hideo Kojima or Guillermo del Toro. You can find someone else to make a good Silent Hill game. I just don't see why. It seems like one of those things where they're leaving money on the table by not doing this. But at the same time, again, like I was just saying, Konami's been so absent from video games that it seems like they want to leave money on the table. It's like, why would you not just make a Metal Gear Solid 6? Why would you not just make a new Castlevania game? Why would you not do a lot of things that Konami just doesn't do these days? That's like, okay, you're leaving so much money on the table. These Metroidvania games are a dime a dozen. It's the most popular genre in the indie world right now, and everyone likes these Dark Soul games. It's like, why would you not make a new Castlevania game? And they just won't do it. And then, now it's been long enough that you can make a new Metal Gear Solid game. Kojima's far enough removed from the franchise at this point with his success of Death Stranding that you think, why not make a new Metal Gear Solid game? Well, clearly they don't give a shit because they won't do it. And now we're at a similar situation where it's like Capcom's raking in all this money. The horror genre in gaming is just doing better than it's ever done before. It was so absent for so long, and then this generation it kind of came back with a vengeance, and now we're seeing horror just do so very well, especially with these new Resident Evil games. Why would you not bring back Silent Hill? Why would you not make a new entry in that franchise? So yeah, there's a chance that this rumor is true and that this is what's happening. And Eurogamer is a very respectable source. They're usually right when they report on something, so I believe it. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Konami is just like, we'll just leave that money on the table and keep making pachinko machines and selling health club fitnesses to people in Japan. So who knows? But I'm like 50-50 on this one, especially because it's Eurogamer, and I have a tendency to believe them. They don't usually pick up stories unless they have reason to believe it's real. So here's hoping, because that'd be cool to see Konami just make something. But keeping with these horror games, and speaking of Resident Evil, our next story is actually that Capcom, while currently working on the Resident Evil 3 remake, has already reported that it is at least thinking of Resident Evil 8, which would be the first main entry non-remake since 2017's Resident Evil 7. Sources familiar with the game have told Eurogamer coming back with some more reports, that the game will likely be first person just like Resident Evil 7 was. Additionally, the game will likely feature Resident Evil 7 protagonist Ethan Winters, along with Chris Redfield, and some non-zombie enemies like werewolves and female ghosts. Settings will include a large castle with a surrounding area, and that's kind of really all we know about that. So those are some weird, like, non sequitur kind of details, but doesn't surprise me that they would stick with first person. The first person perspective seemed to do really well for Resident Evil 7, and I think, personally, in my own opinion, I think first person is by far the definitive perspective to choose for a horror game. I think, first person is the kind of perspective that puts you most in the shoes of the protagonist or the character, and it's the most enveloped. So if you're going to try to make someone feel really exposed and isolated and scared, I think first person is the perspective that better conveys that kind of sense and gets the players into that headspace. So I'm totally on board with that. I loved what they did with Resident Evil 7. It was the first one in the series that I ever gave a shit about. In fact, I even played a lot of the game, which I've been meaning to get back to, but probably won't ever do. But yeah, I think keeping with the first person perspective is the right thing to do, especially because they can kind of have their cake and eat it too, since it's like they're doing this like future iterations, like 7, 8, 9 new Resident Evil games. We're now doing this first person thing. But if you liked the older style of Resident Evil games, we are keeping that third person kind of more over the shoulder, everything they traditionally done with the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. So it's kind of a little something for everyone. And I think that's a good way to keep, both markets satiated while kind of being able to dabble in both kind of genres. As for the protagonists, I have nothing to say on that. I don't know anything about the characters of these games or care about them, but I do find it interesting that you would fight non-zombie creatures as well. Werewolves and ghosts, or specifically werewolves, sound a little out of place for Resident Evil, but then again, I'm not that big a fan of the series. What do I really know? It just sounds like a zombie game, so I'm not sure why you'd have werewolves. It sounds a little too supernatural, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a zombie game. But ghosts, I guess I could see you pulling out ghosts. It makes sense with kind of some of the more spiritual or the supernatural shit that happened in Resident Evil 7. But anyway, that would be that, and that's way too much time talking about Japanese horror games that I'll never play. So let's move on to our next story, which is a quick one, and it's just that Metro Exodus will be getting a new DLC titled Sam's Story, and it'll be released on February 11th. Sam's story follows Sam as he makes his way back to the US. The DLC is the final expansion for the game, and will only run you $8, or it's already included in your $25 season pass if you got that. As far as that goes, meh. That's more just like a report, like, hey, if you're looking forward to that, if you're looking for an update on Metro Exodus's DLC, there you go. I played a little bit of Metro Exodus myself. I was a little disappointed as someone who really enjoyed the first two. I wish the third one wasn't so open world-esque, and I kind of got bored of it after like half the game. But if you enjoyed Metro Exodus, which I hope you did, because I just want to see people be happy unlike me, then look forward to that. It's coming out in just a few weeks here. And then we've got Another little short one, Jarrett West, director of marketing for the Xbox back in the 360 days, has left his role at Netflix to come back to Xbox. His team developed marketing plans for games and hardware and services across the division, and his new official title is Chief Marketing Officer. So, welcome back to the Xbox family, Mr. West. While I don't know much about you, I certainly look forward to having more people back on Team Xbox here to make awesome games and moves that will make this platform and brand even more incredible and exciting than it already is. So welcome back. And then our final wrap-up story, again, and another little note, just kind of a smaller one. Players anxiously awaiting the release of Wasteland Remastered will not have to wait much longer, as inXile Entertainment have confirmed that the game will come out on Xbox One and PC on February 25th, 2020. Of course, the game will launch into Game Pass from the start, and Wasteland Remastered takes the 1988 original and improves the visuals while bringing it to a modern audience. For those looking for more of an accessible entry point for the franchise, Wasteland 3 is set to release on May 19th, 2020 on Xbox One and PC. Yeah, I mean, people were waiting for this. They were kind of vaguely talking about a remaster of this. I feel like this kind of remaster was flying under the radar. Not many people were talking about it, but I guess that's because the original Wasteland is kind of a niche game. So if you were looking forward to that, now we have a release date. It's really, really soon. So get on that and enjoy that shit. It's just one more month. I've been meaning to get to Wasteland now that Microsoft owns inXile. I feel this obligation to at least familiarize myself with some of their work. I'm planning on jumping in with Wasteland 2 or 3, probably just 3, because chances are I will not like this game. I'm just not really big of a strategy person, but I could be wrong. Every now and again, I enjoy a good strategy game. I used to play a little bit of Warcraft back in the day. I love Halo Wars. I've enjoyed some of the Command and Conquer games. So who knows? We'll see. But that is going to do it for this week's news. A little bit of a slow one, but it's early in the year. We're kind of just waiting for the onslaught of spring games to come out, as well as to hear some more information on next gen hardware, which at least the PS5 we should be hearing a lot about pretty soon in the next month, I'd assume. And then shortly after that, I assume we'll get an Xbox Series X full reveal. So definitely just anxiously awaiting more information on next generation hardware and the big games of spring 2020, which a lot of which have now been delayed, as we know. So let's jump into the new game releases via Xbox Wire for this week. There are a total of 12 new games coming to Xbox this week. So we'll just go down the list and just talk about them based on names and screenshots alone. The first one is Stone, which comes out on January 27th, so it's already out. And this game you play as a deadbeat kind of Tommy Bahama looking fucker. He's a koala bear. He's a cartoon, and he lives in this apartment all alone. He's got alcohol bottles all over the floor. He's kind of a deadbeat. His girlfriend probably left him. He's probably completely pathetic and alone. But what's most important to note is that this man is indoors and he's wearing sunglasses, which just means he's an unsympathetic douchebag, because really there's no reason to be combining indoors with sunglasses. So, if you're alone and sad, Mr. Stone, Mr. Koala Bear, it's probably for good reason. Our next game is Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, which is out January 28th. Now, this game is apparently quite a big deal. People were really talking highly of this game. Apparently, it's a nice episodic kind of game, but really all I need to say about it is we talked about this game last week. I guess got pushed back a week, but yeah, this is that Ford versus Tesla, whatever game I just don't want to get into it. It's just not necessary. We've already talked about it. You don't get a second chance. So fuck you, Kentucky Route Zero. Our next game is called Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire Ultimate Edition. Now, if you don't know what Pillars of Eternity 2 is, it's this kind of game where you play as like a dragon. It's like a dragon simulator, and you go around the town. You try to make peace with people. It's kind of like in Finding Nemo when those sharks are trying to be vegetarian and not eat fish. It's a similar concept. You're a dragon. You're trying to make peace with this medieval village, and you don't want to eat humans anymore, but they think you're a monster and they attack you anyway. So you have to defend yourself, and you're not going to let a good dead body go to waste. So you end up eating it anyway, and then people think you're a monster. And it's just an old Obsidian game. This is some weird concept they had long before Outer Worlds or Fallout New Vegas or Fallout in general. So just let it be. It's there if you want to play it. But anyway, it came from space and ate our brains is the next game. This looks to be one of those indie games. It might be a shooter actually. I do like arcade shooters, so I'm not going to pick on it too much, but needless to say, the art style is very blocky. Our next game is called Journey to the Savage Planet. Now, this is a game that's been getting a lot of attention for whatever reason. I keep seeing it pop up in news cycles and on YouTube and stuff. I don't know why all of a sudden people care about this game, but it is one of those like No Man's Sky looking like planet exploration games. I really do dig the art style of it a lot. It's not only very colorful, but pretty cartoony. And some of the creatures in the game look pretty fun, but I don't think I'm going to play it because chances are it's probably really boring and open, and I hate games where we get to explore and there's open-ended shit to do. I just want you to tell me a very tight and funneled story, so fuck you, Journey to the Savage Planet. I hope you sell poorly. Our next game is called Music Racer. It comes out on January 29th, and the most notable feature about this game is, yes, it is Xbox One X enhanced. Now, this is a rhythm game. There's a cool, like, DeLorean-looking time machine car driving down this purple highway. It's very stylized. It's very cartoony. That's probably a cool game, so I'm actually not going to pick at it. I might even check it out myself, but if you don't have rhythm, I don't recommend it because it is a rhythm game, so all you white boys stay away. Our next game is called Milo's Quest. It's the console edition, and it is out January 29th, so it's already out, you dumb idiot. What are you waiting for? Go play this game that looks like Pokemon with a dog. So there's that. You play as a puppy. Our next game is called Monster Energy Supercross 3 Special Edition, which comes out on January 30th. I've always wanted to play one of these games, so I'm not going to pick on it as much as I should, but this is Xbox One X enhanced. So if you want to tear up some dirt, if you want to drink Monster Energy in amazing 4K, then this is the game for you. You're gonna get the Monster Energy Supercross 3. You're gonna get the 4K resolution, and after a nice long race sponsored by Honda and Toyota, you're gonna gulp down a ice cold, refreshing, green, sludgy Monster Energy drink because you're a pimple-faced teenager that still likes Warped Tour. Our next game is called Code Shifter, and I wish what that meant was that the developers shifted the code off the computer because this game looks like some indie trash. 8 bits of Super Smash Bros. Ripoff. So play that if you just don't have enough fighting games in your life. Next game is an Xbox Play Anywhere game called Hyperdot. So if you want to play a game about chicken pox anywhere, I guess you can do that, you fucking idiot. It's also Xbox One X enhanced. I don't know how you enhance a game where you play as a dot, but okay. And then we got Skyrogue on January 31st. This is a action life flight simulator where you play as a spaceship blowing up polygons. It's trying very hard to look like Star Fox 64, so that's stupid. Might even play it myself. And then next we got Coffee Talk, which is a game where you play as girls with blue and green hair, and they have, of course, dragon things and tentacles because for some reason there's this group of nerdy ass little white boys in this world who are very obsessed with tentacles and anime, and they have no friends and they touch themselves inappropriately because they're gross and they're on DeviantArt half the day, and they make games where every woman has large breasts, but they're not overly sexualized, but they kind of are. And you can flirt with them, you can pick them up at a bar, you can dating sim them. But this game is just really absolutely stupid, and I hope you play it because you're probably absolutely stupid if you're listening to me talk about it. And that's going to do it for the games coming out this week. As a reminder for January, the games with gold. It's your last few days to download Styx Shards of Darkness. You got Batman the Telltale series until January 15th or February 15th. You've already missed out on Tekken 6, so fuck you. And then Lego Star Wars 2, you've got that until the 31st, so download it right now. But more importantly, we now have February's games with gold, so let's go over what you can expect in the month of February. So for the 1st through the 29th on Xbox One, you got TT Isle of Man, which is a sim motorcycle racing game, which I think I'm going to check out because I like sim racing and I love motorcycles. So I think I'll check that out. That sounds like a pretty interesting game. If you're a Forza fan, if you're even remotely interested in motorcycles, you might be interested in this. It kind of crosses. It's kind of like the motorcycle version of Forza, if you will. So definitely worth a look if you like boring, stupid shit like that, because I know I certainly do. Call of Cthulhu is our second Xbox One game. You got that from February 16th through March 15th on the Xbox One. And then we've got Fable Heroes on the Xbox 360 side for the first half of February, and Star Wars Battlefront for the second half of February. To be clear, this is the good Star Wars Battlefront, the one that people are really nostalgic for, the original pandemic-developed Star Wars Battlefront on the Xbox original. So that's really exciting to look forward to. Some good Star Wars. But that's going to do it for this week's show. I appreciate you listening as always. Thank you so much. The show's been getting longer. Let me know what you think about all these added new segments. If you think they're derailing from the show, if you like them, please remember to leave some comments so we can have some more interesting conversation. The conversation part, the comments, suggestions, whatever, questions part is crucial, and I'm going to inject that as much into the show as I can the more it continues to grow. And yes, this show is somehow growing. We're getting close to the 200 a week listener mark. I don't know why the fuck there are close to 200 people listening to the show, but I greatly appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and it makes me, honestly, it actually makes me a little bit uncomfortable that there are people who are continuously listening to my stupid ass go off about Xbox on a weekly basis, but nonetheless, I greatly appreciate it, and it means the world to me. With that said, please feel free to send me money, Patreon, t-shirts, buy it all, spend your money, give it to me. Your money is basically valueless to me. Your finances mean nothing to me, and your money is better served in my wallet. So go ahead and support me there. Follow me on social media. You know where to find me. I'm that guy. It's very easy to find me, so I shouldn't even have to explain myself to you. But Eric's going to play us out with a little song now, and you're going to go ahead and leave me a nice 5-star review on iTunes because you care about me, and that's going to do it for another enticing week. Until next week, remember, gamers, Xbox out.